golf was my life, and I didn't want to give it up. So I went to work.
And remember the name, for at just 9 years of age, Rory McIlroy from Hollywood is following in the steps of his golfing hero, Tiger Woods.
Oh my goodness! Oh, wow! In your life have you seen anything like that?
Hello golfers, and welcome to another episode of Making a Club Champion. On this episode we have a gentleman called Dave Alred. Dave is widely acknowledged as one of the best coaches operating on the planet today. For those who perhaps have not heard of Dave Alred, you may have heard of some of the superstars he has worked with. His accolades and achievements ranging from nurturing World Cup winner Jonny Wilkinson into rugby's most feared kicker to supporting Luke Donald achieve the position of world number one as a golfer. From surgeons, skateboarders, rugby players, pilots, golfers, and even dolphin trainers, Dave is a genuine pioneer in the performance of psychology. Dave is also author of the book Pressure Principle. If the blurb on the front of the book doesn't say it all, I don't know what does. Dave Alred is a genius. He changed my life. Jonny Wilkinson. I hope you enjoy this episode, and as ever, thank you so much for tuning in to Making a Club Champion. Dave Alred, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So I just thought we'd cut straight into it. How did you originally connect with Luke Donald?
His brother-in-law trained at the same gym as I did at that time, and then they got talking, unbeknown to me, and then Luke actually phoned me up, and it sort of started from there, really.
Was that through sort of background because of Jonny Wilkinson, or were you working with any other golfers before that?
No, I worked with Melissa Reid for a little bit with a British Olympic Association sort of model as an experiment, which actually went very well, but sadly the funding didn't continue. And other than that, it was just work in general in rugby and at that time, judo.
I've got this quote here from Luke Donald, which I just wanted to bring up. So he said, when we started, he really wanted to look at everything I did and make it better. We started to create facts and did monthly fact sheets and worked around that. I'm just wondering if you could perhaps share what those data or sheets, what these were, and what you were keeping track of.
Well, basically, that if you're going to do practice, you need to practice against numbers. Otherwise, you don't know whether you're getting any better. So whether it's nearer to the pin or more consistency or whatever, there will be numbers to show it. And the biggest thing about confidence is that confidence should be based on fact, i.e. you have already done it. So the fact that I say to you, okay, well, you look a pretty good golfer to me, doesn't mean diddly squat, frankly. But if you know that actually you can hit 10 shots with a 54 wedge and 5 of those are within 10 feet of the pin, and the others, there's nothing more than 15 feet away from the pin, now that's a fact. You have achieved that, okay? And then you can try and, okay, so how do I get that even better? Well, I can get more shots within 10 feet and so on. So it was keeping track of all the sort of practice data that we had and trying to beat your previous best. So you had facts that actually proved you could do it. And therefore, when you went into a tournament, there was a factual basis behind your approach, and it gave you a lot more confidence.
Fantastic. How did you break that down? How did you break down the whole game?
Well, just really, we looked at off the tee, number of fairways hit, distance, I wasn't really concerned about the length of that. To me, it was all about the scoring. It was how close you get to the pin, how close you get to the pin, regardless of where the pin is on the green. And if you miss the pin and you miss the green in particular, particularly with sort of Sunday placements, then how good are you at getting up and down? And we spend a lot of time of using wedges going into score and making sure that our short game, bunker play, chipping, putting, was as good as it can possibly be, because that was our insurance.
That's what I think, when I think Luke Donald hit number one, is that we all remember him for. And I guess to this day, he was sort of that 125 yards and in.
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time. We're very lucky that at the Bears Club, which is Jack Nicklaus's own club in Florida, there's a par 3. And we spent all the time on the par 3, and there's a long tee boxes. So, for example, if you're on the back tee, it might be about 120 yards. And if you're on the front tee, just imagine a long tee box, it might be 60 yards. So we could do a lot of variable distance work going for a pin. And that was a real breakthrough to have that facility.
Mm. When perhaps... when we were testing these specific yardages, perhaps when Luke wasn't actually technically good, when would you sort of split that practice up between sort of performance when you're collecting data and scoring, and then sort of the technical work as well?
Pat Goss did the technical work, but the only thing that I did do is I created a measure of how it felt. So I wasn't really concerned, although I do seem to have a gut feel about whether somebody hits the ball with their soul and really means it, or whether the person hits it and hopes. And you can almost tell that, and it's probably come from goal kicking. I can tell when somebody really commits to a shot at goal, and when somebody is kicking it, making quite a bit of effort, but not really committed and doesn't really believe that they've got much of a chance. So that really was from rugby, and I sort of applied that to golf. And I don't know what it is, but I can just tell. So, for example, yesterday I was going around with Molinari, and I won't be specific about the practice that we were doing, but basically there were a couple of shots that he didn't hit with his soul. I could tell he wasn't quite on it, and so I'm quite sensitive to that. Does the person really mean it? And does he see the target and expect it to go? And that comes through with his demeanor. I mean, you could call it body language, but I think it's more subtle than that, actually.
So how he stands before he hits the shot? I can't tell you.
I can just sense it. I can almost sense it standing next to somebody, and I can hear the shot. The contact. Does he dominate the shot? I suppose that's the easiest way to look at it. So you can picture somebody dominating the ball, dominating the shot, and expecting it to go where he wants it to go. Is a feeling and a demeanor about them.
So what kind of things would you say to perhaps Molinari if he was maybe not demonstrating those body language?
I would usually. It's quite interesting. This I actually don't say that wasn't hit with your soul. But I tell him when it was, because if you draw attention to a behavior you don't want to repeat, chances are you'll get more of it. But if you draw attention to behavior you want to repeat, then you hopefully get more of that.
I'm going to be very specific with all these questions because I want to be appreciative of your time. So you used to do the fig drill with Luke Donald, I think, as well, and so that was basically when you take 3 golf balls over the course of 9 holes and you play the best shot from each one.
Well, not quite. I mean, people think it's that. It's basically you play a shot. If it reflects the shot that you would expect to do, you play on. If it's not really up to scratch, you have another shot. And if that's not up to scratch, you have another shot. But you have to take the last shot. So you can go back and actually say, oh, well, the first one wasn't that bad. I'll go with that one.
Oh, so you're always playing the last ball of the 3.
Always the last ball. So there's a little bit of pressure on that.
So that's added the pressure up, yeah.
Otherwise, you just spray 3 balls and then pick the best one.
Well, I was doing this last night because I read I read this article, and obviously I was going to try it. So I did exactly that. drop down 3 balls, take the best ball, and I didn't think there was much pressure involved in it actually. Which
no, they're not that there isn't.
No,
but
there isn't. Yeah.
If you actually, so for example, you've hit 2 balls.
Yeah.
Right. One's in the first cut and one's in the rough. All right.
Yeah.
And let's say that your second shot is the one you're going to have to take, and that's in the first cut. Now you think, I still reckon I can get on the fairway. If whatever that ball is, it could be in the rough again. You have to take that shot. So now you're not quite so readily about what we call spending the X's.
Got it. Obviously, building this pressure is one of your main philosophies, and a lot you worked with Johnny Wilkinson around sort of, kicking from different angles and building up sort of maybe harder shots. I was wondering what other drills or routines can one implement, maybe like the fig drill on the golf course or maybe at the driving range?
Well, I think that one of the key things, let's say we take a putting practice where you have, sort of 3, 4, 5 feet putts, and you put pins around the hole. All right. Now, there are 2 ways of playing it. You can play how many putts does it take for me to get all 12 putts in? Okay, so that's 4 at 3 foot, 4 at 4 foot, 4 at 5 foot. Or you can say, right, now, and it took me 14 to get 12 putts in. Now I have to try and get under that. So that's a little bit of pressure. But more pressure would be if I miss a putt, I start again.
Right.
You see, so it depends. You can do a lot by bringing it towards match, by actually increasing the consequence of not quite achieving it.
And how often should one perhaps spend time doing practice in this way?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day there should be a component that puts you under the pump. Otherwise, the behavior that you get to exhibit is not related to the tournament. So there's no point in doing it. I'm
going to sort of move on to affirmations. I was wondering if there are any. I'm going to keep this in a very Q&A format. Affirmations. Did you work with any golfers using affirmations, and perhaps you could shed light on who were using them and how they were using them?
Well, basically I did, and I still do. I still think they're a great thing because we don't like writing about ourselves, and we certainly don't like writing about ourselves positively, but yet that self-esteem ticket is a really big component of whether or not you're confident. Mm-hmm. So it's not a thing that where you wear it on a print on a T-shirt, but it is something that you write about yourself and you put it inside your scorecard. I use it with rugby players as well. It goes inside their diary. So basically it says, I'm good at this, that, and the other. And if I do so-and-so, I'll be even better. So it's actually not necessarily I'm just such a good guy and I could be number one in the world. There is usually a challenge in there. In other words, you could be one of the best in the world, providing, for example, you play your own game.
Okay.
And and that. So there is a couple of caveats in there, and it's basically the areas that you're trying to work on. So it rightly makes people feel pretty good about themselves, and rightly so, but it also challenges them at the same time.
Could you perhaps give an example of, say, one from rugby and one from golf?
I'll give one from a salesman, because all the rugby and players, you'll work out who it is.
Okay, that's fine.
Be something between me and. I remember doing one for a salesman who worked in a big car dealership, and his issue was that he was so keen on selling, he didn't actually spend enough time creating rapport with the customer, and almost wanted to get straight on to selling the car. And of course, he lost a lot of sales because people felt under too much pressure. So the affirmation was, I'm a smart, conscientious, skilled salesman when I take the time to build rapport, find out where the kids go to school, find out their sporting interests and hobbies, and be interested in them away from the vehicle, then I'm more likely to achieve the sale. So it was actually writing down something that he had to do, which he didn't find comfortable. He felt small talk was a bit of a waste of time, and they either want the car or they don't. And of course, that comes across as very too blunt, and a lot of customers, went away feeling pressured.
Right. And how often would, say, someone do these affirmations? Would it be every morning or once a week?
Well, no, you probably do it once a month or once every 3 months. I mean, I usually do once every 3 months with the players that I work with. I let it settle a bit, and sometimes it's exactly the same, but you change a few wording. Sometimes, they've done something particularly good, and you want to improve that as proof that they are able to perform.
Fantastic. During a round of golf, or especially in particular a competitive round of golf, what should the internal dialogue be? What should the questions one be asking of themselves be during a round of competitive golf?
Yeah, I'd be worried if they keep asking themselves questions, to be honest.
Okay.
I would rather have the self-talk being, okay, right, I've got a pitching wedge here. I know statistically that I should be able to get 50% of the shots of these within 9 feet of the pin. Okay, I need to look where the pin placement is. Is there 9 feet all around the pin? And if there is, I should be able to go for it. So I'd rather have dialogue like that, which is related to their training and their margins, that's very front-footed rather than questions.
I was going to say that fits exactly to what you said with reference to Luke Donald and exactly how you were training with him. But you're just replicating that in real, in a competitive scenario as well.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be any difference.
Right. Yeah, and I think especially I think we hope for like a lottery almost outcome when we play in competition modes, because we always play or do everything so differently than when we're actually training, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, but I would argue the other way around. I would say the training probably is a bit too easy, and you're not putting yourself and making yourself accountable or to have consequence when you're training. And if you were to do that, then the training was going to be much nearer the round of golf. Okay.
Has there been a time when you've pushed someone too far in training to increase the pressure that much?
Well, I don't know what too far is, actually.
Okay.
I've certainly created an environment where players have got very annoyed.
Right.
But and I just say to them, well, you're going to get annoyed in the tournament as well if you lob a ball in the rough. So, deal with it.
Fantastic. It reminds me of when, I don't know if you know the story of Tiger when he was growing up, when his dad used to drop the whole bag of clubs during his downswing, or shake keys during his downswing, actually almost in competitive rounds of golf in his teens. So he was sort of building to deal with the added pressure, I guess.
Well, I'm not sure that's pressure, because pressure is usually... but it is an interference,
right?
And dealing with an interference is a useful thing to have. I mean, I saw Ian Poulter got a bit annoyed 2 days ago with somebody that took pictures, but it was a very loud camera.
Right. So there should be a clear difference between interference practice and actually the pressure practice.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
What 1 to 2 habits do some of the top performers you have worked with all share?
It's funny you should ask this, because I'm now trying to sketch out, if you like, the DNA of somebody. And it's not something that you're born with, but I really do think it's an attitude. And it's a combination, which I know sounds almost diametrically opposed to each other, and that is humility and toughness.
Okay.
And those two don't necessarily go together. You get people that are humble, but not very strong, so you have to work on that area. And then you get people that are very strong-willed, but they sometimes veer towards arrogance, and therefore they're not willing to learn and not do anything different. So to find that combination, it to me is the area. And I remind the players that I work with that I actually think, I really do believe, it's humility I don't know all the answers, and I can still improve no matter how good I am now, is the attitude. And the toughness is that when things get difficult, I still keep going. Right. So if you get those two together, you've actually got a pretty potent combination there for somebody to do something quite special.
Fantastic. And sort of the habit would be sort of the attitude to learning and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And a much more open mindset. And when something is different and something is presented, it's a wow, Cole, this is going to be great. It's the starting point, not, oh, why are we doing this? Yeah.
I had, there was one of my first ever episodes was a gentleman called Gary Smith. He teaches the short game.
Right.
He taught Chris Wood, Danny Willett, all of these boys. He's was based in Gloucestershire, and he said exactly that it's when someone is being asked of something different, maybe technically or maybe performance, and they bring on like a willingness to change and learn to grow for that sort of new habit or ingrained sort of muscle memory movement.
It is the attitude is the open and closed mindset.
Yeah. Which there's a book I think called Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. Yeah, which is something good. In 2003, the World Cup, Johnny Wilkinson had a split second to catch the ball, look up, and slot that kick. Obviously, you worked with Johnny most of his sort of adult life. I was wondering so you maybe know him better than anyone else. What was going through his mind during those split seconds? What was that internal dialogue? Do you think when someone's in that sort of very pressured environment, such as like a world rugby kick?
Well, you don't realise it. You just get on. It's another game of rugby. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember the sequence of that, but Mike Tyndall took a missed pass off Wilkinson. He hit it right-footed down to the pocket. Australia then had a line out in their 22, so it was likely they were going to box kick for touch, which they did. And from that line out, we ran what we call a zigzag pattern, which we've done time and time again in training. And it's a pattern that is actually looking for a bust, but we're always set up for a drop goal if we need it. So he would have been just going through that pattern, and that's it.
Just breaking or doing exactly what they do in training again.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
What habit did you notice about perhaps Johnny Wilkinson that perhaps you noticed about him that no one else did, as you had such a close relationship?
That's a bit of a difficult one. I'm quite. I think the relationship with somebody like him or a couple of the others that I've worked with over a long period of time is quite a personal relationship. I mean, he is hardworking, he is diligent, mm-hmm. He's humble, and he wants to be the best he can possibly be. Quite a few people are like that, but he's got, if you like, that in abundance.
Okay. And he was just always eager and hungry to just learn, which seems to be a common thread with all the sort of people you've mentioned.
Absolutely. I mean, if people aren't prepared to learn and do something different and push the envelope, then I'm not really that interested in working with them. Right.
I think in the past you mentioned, I think it was Larry Bird used to be sick in the toilets before playing, or the All Blacks versus Springboks. I think in the semi-final World Cup, when it started to rain in the second half, they all came out and practiced their long throwing passes in preparation. I was wondering what other golfers perhaps you worked with that prepare in a similar level of detail and how they went about that.
Well, all the golfers, I try and get them to create almost a behaviour match. In other words, to almost be playing the tournament before we get on the first tee. And one of the things that I do now is actually make the preparation, people call it the warm-up, but I'd rather call it the preparation, to have quite a bit of unpredictability about it, so the brain doesn't ever get comfortable. Because if the brain's comfortable and something doesn't quite match your intention on the first tee, then it can really throw you. But if the brain is on edge and expecting things and able to deal with them, then you're in a much better position to cope with whatever happens.
Can you give us an example of what that would be like, the unpredictability of?
Well, just for example, in if you're doing preparation, you might have 20 shots where you know what you're going to do. You hit, I don't know, 5 8-irons, 5 6-irons, 3 wood and a driver, and then maybe it's a pitching wedge. And then I would come along and say, right, okay, now one wedge over there, it's 97 to that. And now hit a 3 wood between those 2 trees over there. Now a transition shot for 35 yards to bounce there. So it keeps jumping around. Okay. And therefore you can't get into a pattern of same old, because if you think about it, the game of golf, after you hit the first tee, whatever you're given, you're given. Mm-hmm. You've got no choice about it. I know you can predict to an extent, but most of the time it is a bit unpredictable, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Am I in the rough? Am I in the short stuff? Whatever. Is it going to be a 9-iron? Well, the wind has changed now. Actually, it's a pitching wedge, but I don't want to fly it. Or maybe I ought to try and take some spin off, and so it goes on and so it goes on. And all of those things means that particular shot is unique. So you try and create that when you're preparing for a round of golf. And
you would do this when they're warming up before, say, tournament or competition?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah. You're a keen golfer, as we actually just bumped into each other at the driving range. I was wondering, how do you structure your practice? You off? Is it 3?
4.
4, okay.
What I try and do, my practice at the moment is I'm working on something. I'm trying to flex the wrist at the top. So what I do is I go 8-iron with a repair, which is just technique, and then I go pitching wedge 8-iron, 5-iron. And what I do, I need to get 5 good shots, absolutely flush, with the right feeling in my wrist, on my left wrist that I want. And I keep hitting balls till I get 5.
5 in a row?
When I make a note of it, it might be 9 to get 5, or hopefully 5 to get 5, or it might be 15 to get 5. But I'm always trying to reduce that number. So that puts me under a bit. But what it does, it puts me under pressure to try and produce. And
you do that with each club until you go through to the next?
Yeah, I don't go through every club, and then I will do, like today I did a transition set, which is 10 shots at 20 yards, 10 shots at 30 yards, 10 shots at 40 yards, and so on. And you track that data as well? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you obviously had the TrackMan out there as well, and that was that recording all that data for you?
Yeah, so I'll know when I go into my iPad, all the scores, I'll have everything there.
Okay, what ratio should be spent between with your coach or perhaps just practicing by yourself?
It just depends, honestly. It doesn't work like that. Like, for example, Molinari's got the Italian Open next week, so I've done 2 days with him at the beginning of the week because he had a week off. Mm-hmm. So we felt we really want to blitz the 2 days. Then I did Friday afternoon with him, and then I'll do Monday in England, and then we'll fly to Italy. So it varies. Okay. It's not hard and fast.
Fantastic. Right. I'll end with these sort of rapid fire questions. Sorry, this has all seemed very rapid fire, but I want to be respectful of your time. So, what are the 1 to 3 books that have greatly influenced your life?
The books that have influenced my life?
Yeah.
Gosh. It's quite difficult.
It doesn't have to be golf related. It doesn't, yeah.
No. Yeah. Well, I'm reading Sapiens at the moment, which is quite an interesting book on the sort of story of mankind and how we got to where we've got to.
Yeah.
I can't remember, actually. Don't Die with the Music in You, by a guy called Wayne Bennett. That's quite an interesting book.
Okay.
And the rest of them, I liked Kevin Moran's Psychology of Concentration, but that's really an academic book. But there was a lot of stuff in there that I actually quite enjoyed, as well as having to use it for my PhD. So, and the trouble is when you do a lot of academic work, books become a tool rather than a pleasure.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. I'll put all of these in the show notes for people to sort of read up on. What purchase of, say, $100 or less has had the most impact in your life, say, the last 3 to 5 years?
Golly, $100 or less?
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know. Honestly, I couldn't think. Maybe the Rolling Stones DVD concert.
There we go. Okay.
That'll do. That bigger bang. A bigger bang. There we go. That
Fantastic.
was good.
We must have watched that several times to make that feature in the top.
Yeah, I have actually, but I was actually at one of the concerts that's actually on the DVD as well. So.
Oh, right. Okay, fantastic.
But I can't see myself.
Well, I have to look up for that one, I think. In the past 3 years, what new habit or / belief has greatly improved your life that perhaps you've introduced or has changed over time?
Just consolidating more and more that wherever you are, whoever you are, you can always get better, but that doesn't imply there's fault with what you're doing at the moment.
Okay. So what you currently are doing
really
is...
preach that, and particularly to older people who feel they can't and it's too late. I totally repute that and say, no, it's never too late. It's never, ever too late. If I can teach a 74-year-old lady to play golf, then you can do it.
Okay. This is an interesting one, which I thought of actually just after our range today. After you've had your evening supper, what do you currently do in the evening? How do you spend your evening time?
Gosh, usually looking at the next couple of weeks and deciding, where am I going to be? Have I booked the parking? Is the hotels booked?
Right.
All of that usually.
So
that's basically it. Yeah.
So you are how you currently traveling to many tournaments? Is that how you spend your day?
No. I mean, I'm at the moment. I'm going to Italy next week, and then I'm going to Australia straight after that, and then I'm in New Zealand for a week. And then I come back and I'm in Dubai, and that'll be for golf, and then back to the UK.
Fantastic. And are you mainly spending your time with golfers now, or still involved in rugby? No,
it's a mixture. I'm doing a No Limits Academy at TSS School. I'm doing some coaching at Bond University, rugby, and some golf, Brad Kennedy in the Sanctuary Cove.
Oh, fantastic. Again, I'll put those all in the show notes for people to look up on. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do? Or what questions do you ask of yourself to get back on track if you do get overwhelmed or unfocused?
Just reset.
How do you reset?
Bite-sized bits that need to be done that you can cope with. It's like, I suppose the other thing is make a list and then start knocking bits off the list.
Just to get some momentum.
Yeah, just to get, yeah. And also see that it's not insurmountable. And sometimes I'll even make a list of things that I need to do and set the kitchen timer for 45 minutes and go absolutely bananas on it.
Okay.
And then when the bell goes, see how much I've done. And often I just keep going.
Oh, fantastic. That's a good one. I think that's actually called Parkinson's law. It's the classic example of when you're at university and you had 4 weeks to do your assignment and you did it the night before in like 2 hours. Like the task increases to the size of the time limit you set to it, I think it is. Do you set goals, or if so, how do you set them and what do you decide? No,
not really. I set, if you like, tasks, and I set myself sometimes process goals, whether it's my own training or practicing. But I don't like setting goals specifically because in my job it's a very precarious existence. You don't know what's around the corner. So I haven't got control as much as I'd like to have, but I can control. The things that I can control, I do take on board, and I do set myself targets or processes that I want to achieve.
Could you perhaps give an example of that?
Just lately, I've been training, and even if I don't feel like it, I still make myself do it. So I get very disciplined, and it feels that I'm in a good position then to demand discipline of others that I work with.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, your last question is action challenge, which of course our listeners can sort of try something which you believe in greatly for themselves, perhaps in golf or perhaps in life. So fire away.
Just go through a week and write down 3 good things that have happened each day. And when you get to the Sunday, sit down, read all those that you've written, and then say, why am I better than I was last Monday? Okay.
So it's like a gratitude.
Not quite. It's just actually showing that I can improve. If I just keep my mind open, I can improve. I can be in a better place by next week by virtue of how I approach this week.
Okay, and that could be in business, life, relationships, anything.
Anything, yeah.
Very good things. Well, I'm going to wrap things up here, Dave. Really, really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for answering all those very quick, rapid-fire questions.
Yeah.
Where can people reach out to you or follow you online? Any books? I know you have the Pressure Principle.
And I've got a Twitter, Dave Alred Twitter, which I just try and keep people in touch with what I'm doing and a little bit of the sort of philosophy that I'm trying to adopt. So just out of interest there, yeah.
Okay. And you have a website, is it davealred.com?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put everything up in the show notes, and thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. It was a really pleasure.
Okay, you're welcome. Take care.
Cheers, Dave. Bye-bye.
Thanks again for listening to Making a Club Champion podcast. If you love the show, don't forget to leave a review. If you want to take immediate action on what you just learned, head over to www.makingaclubchampion.com, where you'll receive your own personal action challenges from the latest guests, all of the show notes, strategic philosophies, and much, much more. If you want even more from the show, head over to Instagram at Making a Club Champion, where you'll receive lots of golden nuggets and gems and goodies. Until next time, thanks for listening.